Welcome to episode 12 of the Total Sports Northumberland podcast. I'm Jeff Gard, bringing you interviews each week from Northumberland County and beyond. You can find the podcast each week on the Total Sports Northumberland website and stream or download on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. If you want local sports news from Northumberland County, check out totalsportsnorthumberland.ca. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Keep listening for details on how local athletes can join the podcast. My guest this week is Dr. Albin Marapiza, a Port Hope chiropractor who is heading to work at his 7th Olympic Games. He's had his practice in Port Hope for about 15 years after obtaining an honors bachelor degree in psychology from Trent University and then graduating from the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College in Toronto, where he earned distinct clinical excellence. He went on to complete the International Chiropractic Sports Sciences program and about 3 years ago earned a Master's of Science degree through McMaster University's Masters of Rehabilitation Sciences program. Albin, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Jeff. It's always a pleasure to join you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. We've talked even in recent months about the Tokyo Olympics, but I mean, now it's very close. So close that you're even at the airport right now, ready to head to Tokyo.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, I'm just waiting to board a plane right now, so it is here. It has been a long, since it was postponed. It's been a long time, but yes, it is here now, so I'm excited.
I mentioned in the intro, this is your 7th Games, so I mean, you were in 2008 in Beijing, Vancouver 2010, London 2012, Sochi 2014, Rio 2016, and Pyeongchang 2018. But this one is different. What are your expectations as you head to Tokyo? And I guess, a lot of the protocols that will be put in place once you get there.
Well, yeah, it's extremely different, I think, so in so many levels. The first thing is that it's postponed. It's supposed to happen 2020 in July 23rd, and it's happening in July 21, and it's being called, Tokyo 2020, although it's taking place in 2021. So I think that's symbolic for all the changes and the difficulties and mishaps and that this games have gone through until it's now about to happen. So it is going to be very, very different, and I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to miss it, because it'll be very memorable in that aspect. It's going to be very different protocols. There's no touristy stuff at all. We're going to the village, and once you arrive in there, you only leave the village to go to the venues where you are working and back to the village. And we're going to be tested, for example, every day. And everyone, it's got to be over 10,000 people in that Olympic village, so everyone is going to be tested every day. So it's going to be very different in so many levels. No fans or half maybe capacity. That's even haven't been decided yet. I was just reading the news today that Tokyo is on an emergency lockdown, so it'll be very different for sure, yes.
Yeah, it sounded like no fans. As you work with athletes, and I mentioned earlier you have, not just your degrees in chiropractic, but also psychology. Like, how do you think that affects the athletes that are used to competing in front of thousands, in some cases, of fans?
I'm going to answer that not as based on my degree in psychology, because I was an undergraduate and I don't feel that I'm qualified, but from my experience, I think over 15, 16, 17 years with sports, I think it's going to affect them in some way. I know, for example, your listeners in Northumberland are very familiar now with Andre DeGrasse, that comes in very often to visit me, and our lovely venues on high school so he can train.
Yeah.
He loves the fans. He feeds off that, so it's going to be a bit different for him. But and I'm very certain that there's a lot of athletes in different sports that get their adrenaline and motivation from the fans being there, like soccer being one of them, basketball, volleyball. There's quite a few sports. I'm pretty certain that they will feel the lack of fans, but I think at the end of the day, they've trained all their lives for this moment, so they're, in a way, I think they're robbed of that excitement and the presence of the fans experience, but they are still going to go through it because at the end of the day, they need to compete and get through their results that they have been looking forward to all their lives.
I should ask you too, because you said you didn't want to miss these games, but did you, just the way things are still going as it relates to COVID-19, especially in Tokyo, like, did you have concerns about going?
You know what? I don't have any personal concerns. To be honest, I think I'm fully vaccinated, and I just want to take this opportunity to urge anyone who's hesitating to get vaccinated is to please go ahead and get vaccinated. We have actually our pharmacies vaccinating at Port Hopewell Center. If anybody's not getting anywhere else, please let me know, because we'll get you to our pharmacy. That's the only way we're going to beat this pandemic. I'm not concerned because I'm fully vaccinated, and I'm very cautious of and I'm going overboard with the precautions because what I would hate the most is that for whatever reason, one of the medical staff or someone like myself gets infected and brings it to the team, and it would be absolutely devastating, I think, to so many levels. The athletes will, if they get infected, they won't get to compete, and they'll miss their one and only chance, maybe sometimes, that they get in their lives to compete at that level. So I'm very vigilant, I think, and although I'm fully vaccinated and will be tested every day, so that level is so different than any other thing. I mean, now we have a different dimension and a completely other factors to be concerned, other than performance and therapy and those things that we normally have signed up to do as high performance medical staff.
What is your, just in a general sense, what is your schedule like when you're at an Olympic Games?
So it's going to be busy for sure, but I do have about half a dozen sprinters from Canada that the top sprinters, essentially male and female, that look after when I'm here in Canada. So that would be my job. I think I will have. I follow their schedule essentially, and I have to organize my time from waking hours to sleeping based on their needs. So, for example, I'll get up in the morning, and then we know that track and field will start pretty quickly once the games have started. And so I will see the priorities. For example, there will be the preliminaries or heats, we call it, and then I'll see who's competing the next day or two. So I'll start to prioritize following them on their daily routine. So as soon as I wake up in the morning, we'll have breakfast with them. Then we'll go into, depending on what their schedule is, we may be doing, some training sessions, some warm-up sessions, or on the village at their facilities, the facilities there, or we get on the bus and get to the stadium and have a full training session, depending on what it is. But my life for the next a month will be revolving around the needs of the athletes that I care for. So it's and there's no schedule for me. It's not I go 8 to 5 and then after 5 I'm free. The other therapists maybe are, but I we'll go out for dinner with them. We dine together. We'll If they have a video session or something like that, I'll sit at the background. Just so essentially, I'm there 24/7 for those athletes that I care for, and that's what my schedule evolve around.
Well, I know video is even important to you because, like, when I spoke with Kamika Bingham earlier this year, like, video plays a huge role in what you can do and see from watching the athletes.
Oh, absolutely. I make use of technology very much so because, and it has come, you asked me earlier, what has been different from this pandemic, the training and the care that I give. The difference has been actually that I've used the videos way more than I ever did before. For example, the Kamika flies from Louisiana to come and see me sort of on a regular basis. But there was certain points during the pandemic that was not possible. So I would ask her to send me, every other day or daily actually videos. Her coach would send me videos of her running, and we can pick up really any things that are not helpful to her performance on movement and during her runs and training. So based on what I see, I will have a debrief with her and the coach, and I'll say, for example, we need to maybe pay a little more attention to activating certain groups of muscles because I see some movements that tell me the muscles are not activated properly, and there's some dominance on the other side, and then there's weakness on one side, which creates imbalances, and then the performance suffers. So, videos have been an incredible tool, I think, to during the pandemic to actually manage, those athletes training down south in Florida and Louisiana and Texas and California. Yep.
I definitely want to get because these are going to be athletes. Canadians will definitely see highlighted at the game. So let's just talk about some of those sprinters: Andre DeGrasse, Christelle Emmanuel, and Kamika Bingham.
Yeah, so we actually have had this year. It's an exciting year because they've had some fantastic performances so far. Andre is in top shape. I saw him last week when we had a training and therapy session at St. Mary's High School in Cooper, and he was looking fantastic. I just communicated with him actually half an hour ago again, and he's overseas in Europe, and where I'm going to meet him shortly. He's doing well, so he's on track, I think, to do great things. He's got a wonderful coach, an absolute probably one of the best in the world. His agents are very, very, very supportive of him, and they've done a wonderful job of reducing and cushioning all the pandemic factors and negative effects. So he's ready. He's really. I'm looking forward to that because I think he should do something special in Tokyo. That's what I'm excited about. Crystal is pretty close to her personal best. I think the season has stayed healthy all season long, and she's looking really good. So I'll see her shortly in England before we go to Tokyo for another competition. Kamika is doing very well. She obviously made the team, and she's going to compete at the relays in 100 meters. So I just saw her last. Both her and Crystal last Saturday at the High Performance Center in Toronto, just for one last session before we all start to fly out places, and so they should do well. There's another guy I think that you probably have not heard, Baladia Jamala. He's part of our relay team at 4x100. So he did a personal best as well, and he's running 10 flat for 10:07. For 100 meters, which is a personal best for him this season. So there's some there should be some really good performances coming up, I think, in Tokyo. I'm pretty excited. And then you can see if any of your listeners follow track and field, there's a lot of world records being broken already prior to getting to Tokyo. So if that's an indication, I think we should have some really fantastic results in when we get to Tokyo.
Yeah, that's great. Last time I talked to you, you were working with a shot put athlete, Brittany Crew. Have you been working with Brittany still?
You know what? No, I haven't. Yes, I worked with her because she was injured, and she was back on track when I talked to her last time, and we given her some rehab exercises, and she's doing pretty good. I think she one of her. One of her teammates, I think Sarah, got to be the Canadian champion this time around, and Brittany's second place. But she's healthy and competing, so I haven't seen her, recently because the schedule issues. Like she might be doing something else when I wasn't around, but she's healthy. I know that because I talked to her coach actually just a few days ago.
Very good. One of your other big athletes, Trinidad javelin thrower Keyshawn Wolcott, won gold in 2012 and bronze in 2016.
Yes, so he's one of the athletes that I'm permitted to treat when I'm at the games. In fact, I think there's been some discussion between the Trinidad and the Canadian team that I could do both. So I am actually fully credited with Trinidad and Tobago when I go to Tokyo, but obviously I'm going to care for my Canadian athletes as well. So I meet Keyshawn in Lisbon tomorrow morning, and then we both will fly together to London where the other Canadian contingents are. So Keyshawn is doing really, really well. He's been competing in Europe now for the last month and a half or so, or 2 months actually now, and he threw 89, which is really wow, it's a really good result in one of the competitions. So, but he's definitely in need of therapy because I just spoke to him about an hour ago. So he can hardly wait for me to join him. So I'm gonna as soon as I get to the airport, have a car and then straight to the hotel. That's the first thing I want to do. Actually, treating him before we head out the next day to England together, and his coach and his Cuban coach as well. But he's doing well. He should be he should be doing something big at the Olympics again, and it'll be his third one, as you mentioned. I think anything less than gold, in my view, would be not his capacity this time around. I think he's capable of getting gold this time, and he will get gold.
Okay. Is there anyone else you want to mention that maybe I'm not aware of that you're going to be working with?
No, I think these are pretty much the ones that I'm caring for this time around. And I mean, I obviously have a lot of other athletes that are part of the Canadian team that come in at the clinic or I've cared in the past, but I have pretty specific group when I get to Tokyo. So I'm as I said to you earlier, I have 6-7, so I'm gonna just follow those 6-7 24/7, and it should be good.
Yeah, I guess it'd be challenging to have too big of a group when you really need, as you stated, you need to be available to your athletes when they need you.
You're absolutely right. I had that experience in Rio, and it was the most physically tiring games, to be honest, ever. It was the most satisfying for me because of how well Andre did and the others I was carrying. But it was very demanding because I went in to treat the sprinters, and then it started with one or two other long distance runners and so on, and then I pretty much became the guys to go to, unfortunately, and it was so busy that I remember I had about maybe a 4-hour window off or 5-hour window off one night, and we had to go. I wanted to definitely see the statue of Christ in Rio, and I remember going through that. It was a funicular, or like a car, a small train that essentially goes up the hill or up the mountain. And I don't remember that trip. I fell asleep. So my colleagues there woke me up when we got there. So it never happened that before, that sleep on a train or a plane. But in that case, I think I was so exhausted. So I don't want to have a big team because then I can't provide, I think, the quality and the attention to detail that is required at this highest level of performance. And that's why I think I prefer like 6 and 7. And I made a point this time around to not to to fuel any expectations of others that I'm going to be available for them. I just picked those 5 or 6 that was agreed to with Trinidad and the Canadian team, and I said that's it. So I can't do anymore.
If you know an athlete who should be in the spotlight, go to totalsportsnorthumberland.ca and fill out the form on the Athlete Spotlight page. They can join me on the podcast to talk about their sports background and also join me to chat with my other featured guest on that episode. So when people are watching the games and seeing these athletes in these big moments, what would you say is something people wouldn't know or see about these athletes behind the scenes?
Well, that's a great question, Jeff. I think I can see you, doing really well and getting to Scott's, whatever his name is, on CBC, getting his role, because you have some fantastic questions. Well, it's a lot of sweat and a lot of pain and a lot of commitment and a lot of support that each of these athletes have had and have put through themselves for not just for a year, not for 2 years, but some of them it's a lifetime commitment until they get there. So I want them to understand that that whatever they see there, that didn't happen in a year or two. That has been since many of them have been since children that they started their sport and they progressed and they've put this amazing amount of work to be able to represent their country. So I want them to know all the efforts have gone for them to be there. So either they win or they are in the finals or semifinals. To me, is that I have a fantastic and a deep admiration for the work that they put through to get there, because I see it every day what it takes to get to the Olympic Games. So that's one. The other one that people don't see is I think there's a certain amount of anxiety and fear. It does not matter who the athlete is. They all go through that. And if they didn't have a little bit of fear and anxiety through the Olympic Games and competition, they are not getting their best performance out of themselves. If they get too much anxiety, then the performance goes down. If they have no anxiety, then performance goes down. But there's a little bit of anxiety, I think, that goes in fear, the butterflies in the stomach. And to be perfectly frank, I get butterflies, when the athletes I care for go to compete. I'm nervous. My palms get sweaty, and then when they're competing, once that's finished, I'm back to my role as the chiropractor and therapist and friend and whatever, confident, and but when they get into the to compete, I get a little nervous myself. So there we go, Jeff. I've given you a little bit of a secret that nobody else knows, except us and the Northumberland listeners. So, but yeah, that's what I want them to know, that everybody has worked so hard to get there, some of them. And then there's, I was at the track at the high performance hub in Toronto last weekend, and one of the girls that I hadn't seen, she's a 400-meter runner. I'm not going to say the name, but I could see that she was her face was like really looking, she had this awful feeling, or I said, "Are you okay?" She goes, "No, I just got an email," and she said, "I didn't make the team." And there we go. So it's one of those moments that you don't know what to say, and you feel bad for them, but you don't know how to help them. So so that's what I wanted to know. So for everyone that made it there, has worked really hard and has given their life efforts and hard work, and some others that are not there also, they did that, but the ones that are there are the privileged ones. Yeah,
because that would be tough news, wouldn't it? Because they put in essentially just as much work as the athletes that make the teams.
Yeah, I mean, you had these. There's so much movement when a team at any sport, a national Olympic or a national federation of swimming or baseball or rugby seven or athletics or soccer, basketball, any of those national federation they have to choose the people who go to this. But believe me, for everyone that is there, there's a few that could have been there and they didn't make it for one reason or another. And they're heartbroken because they worked just as hard as the others to make the team. They just didn't make it. That's life. So every aspect of life has successes and has failures, and I think the ones that seem to succeed is not the one that don't fail, because everyone has to fail at some point, but the ones that learn how to deal with failure. Dust themselves off and pick them up and then try again. And those are, for me, the actually great stories to do. You're asking me, for example, who else do you work with names and Lindsay Tessier, I want you to actually look her up on the web, and he is absolutely one of the best stories, I think, personally for me, that on sports that you've ever heard. She's a 40-something, full-time teacher that was an amateur runner, and then she got so good at it that she made our Canadian athletics team, national team, in Doha at the World Championships in 2019. Not only she made the team, she got 9th in the world. Think of it for a second.
Wow.
It's in Doha, where it's 42 degrees Celsius temperature. It's an event that it's absolutely dominated by the Africans, Kenyans and Ugandans and Ethiopians, you name it. And think of how many great marathon runners they have. Here's this, 10, 15, 20 years older than these other athletes, a full-time job as a teacher in Canada, and she goes in and gets 9th in the world. It's an incredible story. When I was traveling to Rio, I happened to be on the same flight with Scott from CBC, the sport reporter. His last name escapes me.
Scott Russell.
Scott Russell, yes, great guy, great guy. And he was asking me about Andre, and he was talking about other, athletes. And I said, Scott, if you wanted a great story, I said, you got to look after for this girl. This is before she made it to Doha. I said, you need to look her up, because I said that's a great story that I think all Canadians should hear. And then he made note of that, and at some point, I think when I saw him at the stadium, I think with Crystal or Andre, I can't remember, he goes, yeah, that was a great story, Albert. But she didn't make the team this time around. I think she was hurt, and she lost a bit of time, of training, and obviously, when you have a few competitors trying to compete for the same spot, if one of or two of the competitors get hurt and they take time off training, remember the other ones are not taking time off training, they're training. So that creates a disadvantage for the people who got hurt. That's why it's so important that these athletes stay healthy throughout the season, because if they don't, for every week that they lose, or every 2 or a month that they lose of training, the others around the world literally are training for that month, so they have a less training, to compete again. But she didn't make the team this year. I think she, although she's the age that she is, and she's a full-time teacher. I just had a talk with her yesterday, actually, and I think she's going to go again for the next year's Worlds, and she's going to make effort. And I'm very certain that she's actually going to make the team again, which makes this story even more incredible for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll definitely look her up. Before I let you go, because I know you do have to go soon, one other thing that makes this year so different is it's not far off till the next Winter Games, is it? In Beijing again.
It's so crazy. It's 6, 7, 8 months, 7 months away.
Yeah.
8 months away.
So, do you have plans for the Winter Olympics on what you're going to be doing?
You know what? Yeah, I haven't. I've been not recently, but in the last a few months or 6 months, maybe now, or a year. I can't remember now. But I've been in touch with Bobsled Canada. They have a great new director, and he's keen on having me. I think work with them. So I was actually in maybe. 2 weeks ago, I was talking to him again, and we're chatting about the state of the where the sprinters are, because so I might do something with them. I just too early for me to know. I know that the Albanian ski team and the Italian ski team that I've worked in the past I know that they would like me to go with them, but we'll see. I think when it gets a little closer, who am I working with? Who needs, that type of thing. So, but I will figure it out, I think. But I'm definitely going, although I'm a little, hesitant, I think, to see what this games to look first before we post the second one, because in February is in China, as you know. The pandemic, I would expect, would be on the down end, more likely, but it's still, again, we'll see how it all goes.
Absolutely. Well, of course, your focus has been on Tokyo. I wish you all the best, Alban, and enjoy your time there.
Jeff, thanks so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's episode of the Total Sports Northumberland podcast.